A very good evening to everyone. I will be your moderator for today's webinar. I, CA Paras Agarwal, welcome you all on behalf of Board of Internal Auditor and Management Accounting of ICAI, where today we will be discussing about basic skills for an internal auditor with a practical approach, which will surely help us in making an expertise with the practical approaches. I, on behalf of the Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting of ICAI, extend a very warm welcome to you. Before we should start our deliberations on the topic, I would like to quickly present a brief premiere of our guest speaker, CA Savio Vincent Mondeco. Savio, sir, is a highly accomplished and experienced leader in the field of internal audit and finance. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Savio Sir has gained extensive expertise across various sectors, including IT, manufacturing, and logistics. He has successfully led and managed the internal audit functions for large listed corporations with complex global operations, demonstrating his ability to navigate and excel in challenging business environments. His professional qualifications speaks volumes about his commitments to continuous learning and professional growth. He is a chartered accountant, certified information system auditor, certified fraud examiner, and certified logistics leader in DHL. His exceptional leadership and people management skills have earned him accolades and recognitions. In 2021, he was ranked among India's top 100 great people managers by the Great Manager Institute in association with Forbes India, currently serving as the president of internal audit and risk management at Blue Dart. He holds a key leadership role within the organization. Now, it is the time to have some words from Savio sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah.
Savio sir, Nanda sir is also joining. Might be in 1 or 2 minutes.
Okay. So should we wait or should I continue? I think I'll continue and let him join in. Is that fine?
Yes, sir. So you may invite him for his opening remarks.
Yeah, sure. Once he comes in, maybe we can have him come in.
Okay.
So, very good evening and a warm welcome to all and respected board members and paras as well as all the friends on the call. I'd like to thank the board for giving this opportunity to be part of the knowledge sharing session. Okay, Nandaji has joined in, so I'll allow Nandaji to come in first. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Very good evening, madam. Very good evening.
Sir, I welcome you to this webinar and invite you for your opening remarks. Actually,
Thank you. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back with yet another very nice webinar on basic qualities of an internal auditor. You're all aware that internal audit essentially is a management's proposition. It's a management function. And in order to add value, we need to go through the entire processes which are important. Strengthening of processes, understanding compliances, and more importantly, reporting what you find and see how it is, if any loopholes are there, how that is mitigated. We have Mr. Savio, the learner speaker of the day, Mr. Paras Agarwal, the moderator of the day, Madam Aarti Bansal, the secretary, IRs from technical schemes, Satyam Agarwal, Arun Agarwal, and all who have come here to ensure that all of us go home enlightened, putting at rest all the doubts that may have arisen over the years. I want to very candidly put across that internal audit is a sunrise industry, and it is employing so many chartered accountants and professionals to add value. We as internal auditors report either to the audit committee or to the board, as the case may be. We are there to empower them. We are there to give them valid information so that they can effectively take a call how ultimately transformation can happen. We work in accordance with the laid down prepositions, with the laid down terms, and bring out the best for the management to take care of. I will not stand between you and the learner speaker, Mr. Sebi, because I'm in the council. I'm sorry I took a bit late because I am at the Delhi office and we're going on with the management committee meeting, but I thought fit to come out and speak to you even for a minute or so. So I withdraw now. Mr. Sebi, the dice is all yours. Please go ahead. Take the things to your heights. Instruct how chartered accountants could ultimately make a mark in the internal audit industry by their sheer indulgence and hard work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nandaji.
Bye. Bye.
I'll
Okay,
just
bye.
share screen. I hope the presentation is now visible to all.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay, sure. Thank you. So as I was saying, this presentation is primarily catering to people aspiring internal auditors, chartered accountants who have just qualified, wanting to understand what is the career path that they should really take, internal audit as one of them or not, and also internal auditors who have been in the internal audit field but want to kind of get a stronghold onto the internal audit profession. So primarily that is the focus of this session. This is the disclaimer, as I will also be providing some examples. Now, what is the problem statement that we are talking about or trying to cater to? As Nandaji was saying, that actually internal audit is a sunrise, a career path. And one of the objectives is that internal audit orientation for chartered accountants towards internal audit is the whole motto of the Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting. And I think this is one part of it, wherein during the course of a curriculum, if you actually see, the focus is more towards statutory audits. Even during the articleship period, the focus is more on statutory. And that is the reason the internal audit orientation is a little lesser. Now, the suggested approach, the point that I'll try and identify are certain skill sets that if we work upon, how would we be able to become better auditors or in our fields of audit that we are trying to do. What I will also do is I'll first explain the why part of it. Why do I believe, I'll try and convince you all as to why the particular skill set is important, because I believe that once we convince people, I think it's 50% of the job done. And also explain the how part of it. How do we build those skill sets that we are talking about? Now, what is it for you in this entire session? Okay, I believe that through the identification of certain skill sets, or the why and the how, I'm pretty sure that if we work upon these skill sets, I'm sure that you will take up yourselves to the next level. You will become better confident in executing audits and reviewing audits. I think the hard part of the work of you becoming a chartered accountant by itself, the difficult part, the most difficult part is already done. So now it's the easy part of it, which the right direction. I'm pretty sure it'll take you all to the next level. Okay, the surveys consist of two questions and also the industry versus into www.menti.com 549654. So this is the screen that will be available to you once you join in menti.com. So from your internet browsers, you can join menti.com and we will start the survey. So I'll just give you all a minute because this is something probably different. So now I'll go join on the survey itself. So there are two surveys that we're talking about. Okay, one is for the age group and the second is for, so we'll wait for some time because I think We are yet to get some responses. So I'll request members, participants to join menti.com and enter the user ID, the code of 89654. So I think we are seeing very few participants actually as of now who are, so we'll wait for some time. So menti.com, and that is the code which is available on your screen. So we are seeing that there are more experienced people who have actually joined the session. Okay, we'll wait in for some more time. So I will request you all to join menti.com and with the code of, okay, thank you, I saw some thumbs up. Okay. Fine, I think we'll move on to the next survey. The next survey talks about the nature of work. Okay. So again, I will request you all to just enter in your, okay. So here we see, okay, now it's equal. So it's industry versus practice that we're talking about. So it'll give us a flavor, it'll give me and help me to modulate the examples that I will talk about. Okay. Okay, we'll wait for a few seconds more. Thank you for those thumbs ups. Okay, so there are more people from the okay. Request you all to join menti.com and enter the code. Okay, so with that, I will stop this and I'll join the presentation. So thank you for your votes on the industry versus practice. So thank you. That gives me some visibility. So primarily, we have understood that we have more experienced people on the call and typically move from practice. We'll move ahead. So before we go into the skills, okay, so let me spend some time on what do I believe is internal audit. So internal audit, or what is it that I have views on, right? So internal audit, I believe, is something that we work for the organization, and if we work in a collaborative manner to solve problems, which could, either be on the control side or the process improvement side, that is the core internal audit. Now it can be called different names within different companies. It could be internal audit, it could be risk, it could be process assurance, it could be also having a lot of organizations have the governance factors also, audit, compliance. Fine, it also depends on the maturity, depend on whether you're introducing it's a merger, it's a startup, etc. But the core philosophy, I think, of internal audit yet remains, is that if you work for the benefit of the organization, if you have that sole motto working for the organization, and you work with all the stakeholders within the organization who are business leaders, I believe that's where our forte actually lies. Our role is not for investigation. Internal audit, of course, there is a branch wherein you have forensic and you have investigations, but investigation is not the core thing of internal audit. Because if we have the view, or if we work with the perspective that everything is wrong and everything there is a problem, and every business owner is definitely getting a kickback or doing things inefficiently and not managing his job well, and only we are doing well, probably that view may cause a lot of problem while we are trying to do an audit in good faith. So I believe if we actually work in this manner and look at internal audit from that perspective, I think that definitely gives you an edge when you're interacting with businesses. And as Chetan in his last webinar, in the similar session had said, that internal audit actually has a large canvas. That's the beauty of internal audit. So if chartered accountants want to come in, the beauty of it is that it's not governed. Of course, you need to take care of certain aspects of compliances and taking care of stakeholders like the audit committee in case of listed companies, etc. But the otherwise canvas is very large. We as chartered accountants know the process, design of this process. We are actually process for internal auditors, chartered accountants, is huge in internal audit space, and that's how, and that's why also, as I said, internal audit things lot is given additional responsibilities to the IA head to actually manage. Looking at, I have avoided the word because that's really spoken about, but I had so issues. Everything else is the whole objective. With that, I move to the basic skills which I have defined. Now, when I was working on the presentation, I was trying to think what are those skills that my team, if I would really want it, what are the skill sets that would be there. So I kind of had listed it down, and then I had narrowed down to these 8 because I believe that these 8, according to me, are well for us to do well. They are not in any particular the sequence that I wanted to kind of maintain. In the why part of it, as I said, I'll keep working towards it. Okay. So the first one is personal grooming and body language. Now, the question that probably should arise in your minds is saying that, Savio, why is personal grooming and body language a skill for an internal auditor? It is a requirement for every individual. A professional working is it's critical for every professional. So why particularly for an internal auditor? What's so great about it? And the point is that we as internal auditors, if you are in consulting, as we see in a lot of people in practice, would be going to different companies. Okay. It will be different companies. It could be different locations. It could be different stakeholders. It could be different functions within a particular location also. So the point is, we as internal auditors are actually interacting with multiple people day in and day out. And it is important in those scenarios where we are interacting with them, the first impression, okay, and as surveys have said and research has said, in the first 7 seconds, we actually form 11 opinions or 11 impressions of people, right from background, their education qualification, the economic status, the perceived competencies, the trustworthiness, etc. Now, if we just take a step back and just think of our situations where we would have probably met people, wouldn't we have also, formed some opinions or some impressions of people at the initial first, stage of interaction? Definitely, we would. Probably not 11, but definitely we would have formed that, opinion and impression. And that's where I believe that's therefore the first impression of us grooming. Now, what is grooming? I'll not dwell too much in that, but I'm just saying that your haircut, etc., etc., all those very basic things. It's basic, it sounds basic, and I feel a little this of even talking about those basic, but I believe it's a neglected area. Okay, it's going out, co-source partners, a lot of things. This is a neglected area per se, and I believe it is important for us to really create that good impression. Point is, the non-body language typically is how we stand, how we are in meetings. When language, what is the body language? That has a four-time impact, and people can understand that. And if we place ourselves also in and when we do a introspection, we'll understand when we would have got offended, when others would have, probably not behaved well, or not, shook hands well, or a very casual approach. So body language, or when we go and meet our auditees, is very important for us to again create a good impression, and to continue with the impression with the with the interactions that we are having with the auditee. Now the point is that how do we do it? So I hope the why part of it is kind of, catered. Ki why? Because yes, we it creates an impression, and it has more impact. Now how part of it? Now the how part of it is, I'm not sure if you would have seen the Netflix series of Quota Factory. Okay, there was a Quota Factory Netflix, wherein the professor, it's a thing of the IIT entrance exams. So the professor there says that if you want to achieve something, 21 days, only 21 days. And that's exactly what research has also proved, that 21 days it takes to make a habit, but 90 days to make it a part of your lifestyle. And therefore, if we want to work on any of these aspects, I think we have to put in that effort of creating and making it a part of habit. Be it even being punctual, being on time. I think that is also an indirect way of, saying it's not a body language, but it's a part of our behavior, right? People recognize that, people understand that. So therefore, this is important. People give excuses, saying that, oh, I had a very late night, I came back at 2, I came back at 3, and therefore I have to go in the morning and I don't have time to shave, etc., etc. I believe that's definite excuse. To I think we need to make sure that we respect other people, and we respect others, and people also, I am definitely sure that people have a different polite, collaborative, and interpersonal. Savio, politeness, and it's totally for, totally against internal audit, because internal audit, if we start being very polite, people will take us for granted. Of course people will take us for granted. Sometimes it does happen, you will have a very difficult auditee, or you will have an auditee who is always, wanting to shun away internal auditors. But let's remember one thing, and why is this important for us is also what I'll explain. Internal audit is not something which is a required, or not a required, I would say something which people would really want, right? It doesn't come from within, for people to appoint internal auditors or have internal auditors. Internal auditors is not generally welcomed. Okay, now at least slowly, I believe the impression is changing, and I think it's a good thing. But it is not generally a wanted kind of a service, right? So therefore, it is important for us to actually make that inroads into the auditee, into the company, into the function that we are trying to do, by at least being polite. When I say polite, we don't need to bend down, okay? But I think we need to be firm if we are not getting data, if the auditee is not giving us time. We definitely need to be firm, but yet polite. That is a very important thing. Even when we are escalating things because of want of data, absence of data, I think we can do it in a very polite and sophisticated manner, rather than being rude and making statements which may kind of hurt people. I think we need to address a point, and we can do it firmly, without being impolite. Um, so as I also said, that audit is not investigation. Internal audit is not investigation. Therefore, sometimes we also tend to have a notion that everybody is doing things, in a manner to have personal benefits. I think we should also, look at that a little more carefully when we are interacting. Now that's the why part of it. Why do I believe? And I also have another why below. But just to tell you why, now what is the how part of it? Now, how do we actually get into this situation of being polite? I believe that if suppose we have a situation that all of a sudden the auditee has a deadline, unscheduled deadline, we are not getting information, but we have to also begin the audit, right? We have to also start the audit. We have a deadline also. So I think if we discuss and try to find a win-win situation of saying, okay, fine, you had 10 things to give me. Let's not don't give me 10 things, but at least start giving me 2 things so I can work parallelly, concurrently, and then you can roll out discussion, communication for the data. I think is important. The point is that we should life is a journey, right? We should not really burn bridges, because I think relationships, be it profession, be it personal, I think are very critical, and it helps us in the long run. Okay. And when we are actually polite, and when we are we share empathies with the auditee, I think it creates a voluntary participation from the auditee, because at times, even if the auditee is in a difficult situation, and I have experienced it myself as an auditor, they have come out all the way to help us with providing information, irrespective of the fact that probably they have deadlines and all that, just because we've been, we've understood their situation and got into a dialogue. So I believe that in the long run, politeness, collaborativeness, always helps us when we are interacting with auditees and with function heads, everybody. So I believe that this is an important requirement. The first two, as I said, the first one is personal grooming, and the politeness is basically more of an attitude, more of a soft skills, but very important. We'll now get into the other thing of business knowledge. Now, business knowledge, why is business knowledge important for us to do an audit? Because industry to industry, the importance can be very different, right? For a manufacturing company, you have material cost as an important parameter. For an IT, it is payroll, and for logistics, it's the network cost. So, what to focus on, or what is important to one company, or one company in an industry, can be very different to another company in another industry. Therefore, we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be aware of it, and accordingly, we would need to tailor our discussions, the focus areas, so on and so forth. Now, let's take the case of an attendance system, right? So, in a manufacturing company, it's easy for us to identify ghost employees, because you have cards, you have people physically coming there looking at productivity, etc. You have people physically requirement to be physically there, right? But when you look at an IT industry, where you have people working from home, you have people working from client's place, you have people putting in the timesheets, from when they probably go in from trainings, it's difficult to assess how do you really monitor the ghost employees, or how do you take care of the attendance systems. Now, at that point of time, it's very important for you to realize that there is a difference in, again, the industry. Also, you may not really have a lot of people with punching in and punching out in the IT industry. They may be not physically present over there. So, do we rely on the timesheets? Do we rely on other avenues to take in the attendance? So that's the way that you will probably need to deal with attrition levels, for example. Now, company or in the normal industries, attrition levels could be ranging from your 10% to 15% normal range. But in the gig population industry, like your Zomatos, your Swiggies, it is like 80%. Now, if we apply, when we go into a manufacturer, if we go into a Zomato and do an audit, and we find the 80% over there, and then compare that with your 15%, we'll probably say that this company is not going to, work at all. But that may not be the case, right? And similarly, in an IT industry, it may be 25% as compared to 10%, but it's perfectly fine. So we would need to understand the differences in industries, and therefore, when we have an audit observation, we need to take in this cognizance of those differences to identify the observation and the seriousness of that observation, because that's pretty important. The other part is that within the same industry also, company wise, it will be different, right? Because you could have a startup setup, you could have an established player, processes could be definitely different. Maturity levels, as we spoke earlier on the control environment, could be different. You could have central operations versus a decentralized setup, a regional setup, which could be different. Now, why do we believe that business knowledge is important is what I was talking about. But the first thing is about, again, the self-respect. Because when you go to talk to the auditee, and when you speak to the auditee and the auditee gauges that you've not really understood which industry you're actually auditing, it's the self-respect of yourself, right? As I keep telling my team that when you interact, your name or it's your self-respect first, and then they will understand that okay, you're coming from Savio's team, so okay, Savio is to be blamed, or so on and so forth. But the first point of contact is yourself. So therefore, for yourself, do a favor and understand the business to which you are going to audit. So that's the part of it. And how do you do it? Doing it, or is through awareness. Definitely we need to read a little of what is the industry. We need to talk to our colleagues who are in these kind of industries. We need to look at our audit observations to understand the nuances of the industry as well as the company, and that's how we can definitely gain the business knowledge typically. Do your homework. So again, it's a matter of the same thing, but do your homework is very specific to the audit that you would want to kind of execute. Out there, you definitely need to be focused upon the regulations, the guidelines that are there, the policies for the company. um, Typically trying to understand what are those manuals which are there, the standard operating practices, typically any past observations which would have been noted for that particular any notes. So typically some organizations have something called as permanent audit files, like in statutory audits, where you define any legacy kind of points coming and the history behind it. You can refer to that. And during the course of your conversation, it is then important for us to really connect the dots, primarily looking at aspects of with the observations, with any business change which would have happened within the organization. Um, eh, and I think that's where, as auditees, when we connect, because when we just go, I have also seen a lot of times auditors just coming and saying, okay, I want to understand the revenue process, I want to understand the payroll process. Now, at times it can really get frustrating. Why? Because the auditees is already catering to statutory audits. They could be group audits also, which is happening. And again, then you have local audits. So if we go unprepared, or if we do not go with a kind of an agenda item, it can really get frustrating. And again, it's a matter of self-respect. The I believe that if we actually go with a little pinpointed questions of saying that yes, I understand that the payroll process is automated or semi-automated. It is this is how the process works. But I had a few questions on this. How does this happen, or how does that happen? Can I get a little more clarity on that? I think that will give a sense to the auditee that yes, you have done your homework, and now you are come to cross verify or confirm that, and for them to demonstrate to you as an auditor that those either controls or the process is actually operating till then effectively, or what. So I think that is where we can definitely earn the the appreciation from the auditee if we really do our homework. So I think that is a critical piece for us to work upon. Detailed oriented. Now, I think it's important for auditors, as we as auditors, that we actually look at, when we say, there's a very famous saying that an inch wide but a mile deep, rather than a mile wide and an inch deep. Now, that's primarily just saying that we need to really be focused. We really need to deep dive, because that is the critical element in an audit. And believe me, I think amongst probably everything that is there and that I have kind of defined, I believe deep diving into a particular area, into a particular observation, into is the critical for us auditors. To be And just to give an example, yeah, it's just late in the day that it's recorded, but fine. Uh, Over a period of time and through a lot of studies, actually, it got identified that, okay, for each type of a vehicle, what is the paint consumption under different circumstances? Then he applied his, process engineers, they applied their own maths, etc. And they arrived at saying that, okay, fine, we believe that this is the liters to be consumed for a particular vehicle of this kind of size. And everything was fine. We started monitoring the inventory consumption, the inventory stock and variation, and we found that there was a lot of variation in the process. So variation in the actual. So when you actually go and do a count of the physical paint, we found a lot of inventory variation. We found it to be lesser. So then he again went to the drawing board and he said, apparently, maybe I would have taken lesser quantities for the evaporation. And he gave some technical terms and all that and said, okay, let me again reevaluate it. And he did that. He again went to the drawing board. They came back again saying, okay, fine, we can increase it by a certain percentage. This is justified, etc., etc. We said, okay, fine. And we changed the bill of material. We added that and we again monitored it for a period of a quarter. And again, we see that there's again a lot of inventory variation. Now, at that point of time, we started to think that, okay, the process is fine. We introduced the bill of material, we introduced the quantity. Now, is there a process deficiency from the GRN entry? The vendor is kind of, probably frauding us. Is there some employees connected? What is the process? So, what we did is, we said, okay, fine, let's do a random verification of the inventory at any given point of time of all the materials coming in. Okay, so we started doing the random over a period of time. We again did that over a period of month. Now we knew two results would come in, right? Now if a person, that is the vendor and the employees, who actually doing something wrong, we would have found the difference of inventory to actually stop after we doing the random verification, right? Or if it doesn't, then we would have identified everything is it's okay. Let it not even be hidden. Let's make it a good verification, checking of GRNs, etc., etc. So we went at all. Everything was perfectly fine. So we said scrap process. Maybe we need to look at the outside process, the going process. We verified that also, and we found nothing wrong in that. And then we said, okay, there seems to be now a larger problem, because if we didn't find any problem, there's a larger problem. So we said, okay, fine, let's go through the process again. Let's actually go through the entire process again, and let's pay attention to a little more detail. And when we were at the paint shop, what we actually noticed was, so we waited over there for some period of time, and what we noticed is that when a particular model of a vehicle was coming in, there was only one spray gun, and the paint required was multiple. So the person would actually drain the paint. If there was a change of model, the painter would actually drain the entire paint from the spray gun, use the primer and thinner for cleaning it, and then dip it into the other paint for the other vehicle. Now, in the process, what was happening is a good amount of quantity was getting wasted. And that was the reason for the inventory variance, actually. So the simple answer was that we had to simply get a spray gun for each type of paint rather than having one spray gun. It was a payback period of hardly 3 months, but that was the reason. So the point is that this may not even be a kind of an audit observation. It's definitely because we are a part of the team, the in-house team, and therefore we were able to do this entire exercise. But the point what I was trying to convey is that it is very important, I think, for us to get into detail. And detail does not just remain an observation, because I've seen a lot of times people giving just an observation of saying there's an inventory variance. And I think we just leave it up there. Of course, definitely we'll have scope limitations. for a consultant who probably is supposed to do just inventory variance. But if we are genuinely wanting to work towards, as I've said, internal audit of solving issues, I think we cannot remain just till the extent of saying there's an inventory variance, but deep diving into that inventory variance, trying to understand where is the problem lies. The second example is on double payments. So what was noticed is that when we did the data analysis of trying to understand, double payments, we had got quite a good list of double payments, same GRN, same vendor, and the amounts there. So it was a very obvious case that apparently we've been paying double and, or triple or whatever is the uh, number of cases. And that was one of the analysis saying that yes, double payments are happening apparently. Now, when we actually, dwell deep into it, what we noticed is that in a manufacturing, typically in an organization, because you get the vendor details, okay, the vendor or the vendor materials come in from quite a distance, right? Typically, it is quality inspection. There is minor quality defect. The materials don't go back to the vendor. Rather, the vendor sends his person, and those material is kind of it is usable in good condition for the purposes of the production. Now, what happens is, suppose sometimes because there is an urgent need of a particular material, so vendor uh, hello. Okay, fine. I'll do that. Okay. Is this better now? Okay, fine. Thank you for that. So primarily, so what we notice is that when the quality inspection happened for 10 units, because it is required urgently for the production, 10 units are shifted, whether this is an ERP system that I'm talking about, is basically okayed from the rejected quantity to the okay quantity, okay, which we normally call it as unrestricted quantity. And that is then shifted automatically from a system perspective. It goes and creates an AP voucher for that particular quantity, okay, for only 10 units. So now when we look at actually the dump, so let's say that 100 units which was rejected earlier is in 10 lots, let's say accepted by the quality. So you'll have 10 items actually appearing as AP vouchers with the same invoice number, with the same GRN number, but the amounts being only 10 each. So the total of all this would only be 100. So from a system configuration point of view, different companies have it different ways. Okay, so this may not be the best way of how the configuration was probably done, but this was one of the ways in which it is done. No harm, no double payments, actually speaking. But when we don't go into details, into looking at all the exceptions that we talk about, it can really lead to issues, right? So it is important as internal auditors for really understanding the issue per se as to why it is happening. And root cause, when we talk about, actually, sometimes I have seen across, we do not pay attention to the root cause, actually speaking, because when we provide recommendations, our recommendations are very superfluous. They are not really looking at the root cause and really looking at the recommendations per se. So this is just one other example. There was another example of vendor rate rejections. Now, I'll just explain out here. So, sometimes when we send manufacturing components to a vendor for a processing, as a system, as a process, we allow certain percentage of rejections. It can be 1%, 2% as a threshold, and saying that fine, over and above that threshold, the amount will be accordingly debited to the vendor. Now, the entire system actually is, if you see the PO, the process, entire thing of GRN, everything is fully automated. But the manual process, there's a manual process of the chargeback. Now, in this case, which was again a very surprising thing, that the percentage changed because the process improved and the vendor was a new vendor. So when we improved the processes at the vendor's place, so the threshold was reduced from 2 to 1%. But actually, when the manual process of chargeback happened, yet 2% was only considered for the purposes of chargeback and not 1%. So in that process, so although everything was automated, the chargeback process being manual, it was a communication gap was the result, resulting into we undercharging or we under debiting the vendor. So again, coming back to the point is we need to dwell deep, and how is to be done is using the 5 I analysis. This is something which Toyota management system had incorporated, wherein if we question 5 times why, then we are closer to the root cause than otherwise. Okay. Now, in terms of the corrective action, I think when we look at the corrective action and the preventive action, at that point of time also, we are able to question the root cause part of it. Because when we look at it, let's say, for example, the paint shop. Now, in the paint shop, initially what happened as a normal reaction to the process engineer was that okay, maybe the quantity defined in the bill of material could have been lesser. So he kept increasing it, thinking that okay, maybe the inventory variance is a result of the calculation of the quantity defined in the bill of material. But actually speaking, it was not, right. It was, the reason was something else. So as a corrective action, what we had to really do was, one is to go back and really reassess the bill of material and to set it at the right levels, which was inflated to some extent unintentionally. And the second one was on the spray guns, right? So that was on the preventive action. But when we look at corrective action and preventive action, we definitely also go back and really assess as to what is the root cause. So automatically it makes us dwell into what was the real reason behind the observation. So I think that is something which is important. We look at the other one is spreadsheets. Now, this is something which we as chartered accountants probably actually are in love with. Spreadsheets, Excel, that is something that I have found, even myself, I am to be kind of a part of that. Who like working with spreadsheets. I think it just, from the analytics point of view, it really helps you, look at things very differently. But that's also a reality, right? If we today look at it, even a lot of companies today, when we talk about, although we have ERPs, it could be, whatever the best of ERPs, we have a lot of parallel systems also working. And that parallel systems are actually speaking the Excels and spreadsheets, and we love to work on them. And this is again research that 37% on an average work in spreadsheets. Probably the actual number can be much higher, at least in the Indian context. 66 professionals look at spreadsheet at least once per hour, which again probably could be a higher figure in the actual scenario. Now, in the spreadsheets, again, this is something which I would also like to discuss, is that when we say, Excel, and we say, okay, do you know Excel? Are you good at Excel? So people always say that, yes, I work in Excel, I do this, I do that. Okay, how many rows of lines have you handled? It could be, 1,000, 2,000, that way. A lot of things people also use the keyboard, okay, the mouse for navigating Excel. I think if we truly believe that Excel is one of the tools for us to do our work, okay, we need to get more efficient in that. And efficiency in Excel can definitely be achieved only through actually the without the use of the mouse, okay, because we can work faster through the keyboard, and that's one of the ways that we should really be trying to achieve. The other thing is investing our time in in sometimes when I've seen people and team members and others working on some data sets, and we have to create a table of saying, okay, let's give a range of what is the variation from 0 to 20, 20 to 50, and so on and so forth. So people generally go to the filter percentage, and select greater less than 20, then put a remark against all those lines, and then again select between 20 to 50, and then again enter some range. So that's not actually a most efficient way, right? Although we are working in Excel, we know Excel, but I think things which take us time, taken efforts. I think when we are spending a lot of time on doing a particular job on a daily basis, or let's say on some frequent basis, I think it's always good to go back. You have online videos, go back to friends who are good in Excel, take some help to understand, could I do this better? Could I do this faster? I think that is something which is very important. Now, believe me, as I've mentioned here, spreadsheets have shortkeys, okay, shortcut keys, but there's no shortcut to learning spreadsheet. It is actually you have to put in that effort, like how we would have probably learned our ABCDs when we were young, when we began this. It's a similar way that we have to actually learn in Excel. Okay, if we apply any shortcut or trying to do, we are not very efficient. We may be doing work in Excel, but that's not the efficient way of doing it. And I believe there's a good amount of time when I look at my team members also and across. I believe that there's a good amount of time that we can actually save and thereby invest in other activities through being more proficient in the Excel or spreadsheet. So one that is one aspect in it. And just to give an example, way back in the earlier in the IT, one of the IT companies, where you had a disjointed system, okay, between your, so it's an IT company, so we were looking at punch in and punch out of people coming at that point of time to office, because at that point of time work from home was not an option. So you had punch in punch out, you had the attendance regularization. Attendance regularization was more for if you are working at an on-site client side, or you've gone for training. So at that time you can regularize your attendance. It was to leave records, your HR leave records, basis which you were paid salary. And finally, to the timesheets that were getting submitted to the customers. Now, basis that which the revenues to would come in, and the leave records is the cost to the company. Now, what we did was, now the data set was huge. It was also very complicated because it was not simply a download in Excel. Now, when we actually matched all these data points for employees for a particular day, okay, what we actually understood was that for the purposes of billing to the customers, we would enter the leave. Employees entered the leave and said that, yes, I was not working for 2 days in the week, and therefore you should not be charging me for that. Because if we ever do anything wrong there, it could lead to another issues of fraud, and clients could so that was very rigorous process, right? Because it was billing to the client. So there you would have, once the employee would enter the timesheets would get reviewed by the manager and then submitted. So there was a rigorous process. So when we found that employees were entering leave in the timesheets, they were not doing the same in the leave records, basis which the salaries or the encashments or whatever leaves are there were available. So this mapping was possible when we were able to use the spreadsheets as one of the avenues to actually do help us with the analytics, because at that point of time we didn't really have systems to really connect all this information. Now, what was the, and again, coming back to the corrective action and the preventive action, just to link everything. So, one was to say that, okay, how do we connect the systems? So, what control we built in place was that in the timesheet system, the employees would not be or would be unable to enter the leave unless that leave is updated in the HR records. So that linkage was then established to say that fine, first your leave records would need to be updated. Then when you go to your timesheets will have a reference, automatic reference to your HR records, and you'll have your leave over there. And that's how we prevented this from recurring in future. So I think connecting to the skills, I'm saying that yes, getting into details is important, as we spoke about. Spreadsheets is important because it'll help you as an auditor to really work on analytics and to work on things which otherwise would be very difficult for us to really identify, right? Because if we have to look at each individual record manually, it's not possible. So I think spreadsheet is something which is a very important skill set that we should look and invest our time. In terms of basic application testing knowledge, so yes, here I have again put the word basic because I believe that as chartered accountants, as functional internal auditors, we definitely may not have a full-fledged application knowledge. We are not supposed to be IT auditors, sort of, or people who actually branch out into the IT space, like having CISA qualifications, etc. But we are supposed to be functional auditors performing the role of basic role of audit, but looking at the application that we are auditing. Now, just to give an example, when we look at an application, let's say for a logistics company, when we talk about the algorithm that is set in an application for a billing system, it's totally invisible, right? Because we really don't know, and the combinations of those things. So it's not a very simple thing to check, okay, how do we really verify whether the billing is coming accurately? We could just do it in one way of picking up samples and checking, yes, whether the input output is fine. That's definitely one of the ways of out of system checking. But otherwise, in a system which is within the state, you could have a different rate. You could have a different rate for outside the state. You could have different rates for metros, non-metros. You could have a different rate for a far-flung place. You could have a different rate for a product being different. So when you have, and you could also have complexities of discount to be added if you achieve a certain volumes. So when you have all these elements in place, which is really complicated to really validate, at that point of time, your algorithm that you have set and the configurations that you have set in the applications have to be really checked. We spent about 3 months as functional auditors really validating the billing system to make sure that the entire algorithm, which is set as per the business requirement document, is actually operating as what is said. That also includes your rounding up, rounding down, round off. So all those elements, when you actually validate through the again using competency of Excel competency to really validate what should be that values. It's important to look into and give a comfort to yourself that the systems which you're auditing is working as desired. Now you could have a lot of change in business process, right? So when a business process changes, you could, if you're doing something as hard coding. Now I'll just explain what is the meaning of hard coding, what I understand by hard coding and parameterizing. So suppose you have a particular business line of business that you're doing is you're shipping documents with the customer, and you're shipping e-tail goods, right? E-tail goods could be your iPhones, etc. Now, if you hard code that in the system, hard code would mean that you actually define saying that I'm doing documents and I'm doing e-tail and nothing else. That is the hard coding, wherein you are entering in a very specific value to tell the system that pick up these values for the purposes of billing, whatever. Now, let's assume that you add a new product into the whole system and you're also selling Surface as one of additional line. So you're selling documents, you're selling ETL shipments, you're also selling a service for your service surface ground operations. Now, if you go by the hard coding logic and if you do not update this place, you would not be billing the customer for the surface shipments that you have actually shifted. In those cases, when you parameterize would mean that you define a table, a master table, which will say that, okay, the system has to go and pick up from the master table these products and accordingly, bill the customer. Now, whether in that master table you have 2 or 3 or 4, it'll just go and pick and accordingly, bill. So that's the difference between hard coding and parameterizing. When you have masters, it's easier to link your masters rather than defining your values in systems in multiple places. So change in business process impacts all this when you would have not considered the hard coding versus parameterizing. Change in business process also impacts the logic sometimes, so that's also something that we have to be careful with. Coming to some examples like expense reimbursements. Now this was also a classic case. What we understood when the review was done, we found that the creator, so if I'm a person in the finance team and I would have traveled across, if I am creating a document, if I'm creating an expense reimbursement, it goes to my RO for approval, but I also have the avenue to actually audit that because I'm a finance auditor for expense reimbursement. And what we noticed was that probably conveniently this activity was happening. An expense auditor who was a creator of expense reimbursement would get it approved, but would audit it himself. Okay, so therefore defeating the whole purpose. And now, how do you audit this? You can definitely review the expense wise creator, approver, first approver, second approver, and so on and so forth. Of course, the logic of it is something that we can always validate. But from the out of system, probably this is through the database is what we can review. The other things that were wrong or what was something interesting was journal vouchers. Now, journal vouchers again is a very important area looked into very deeply by statutory auditors because that's where the entire misstatements, financial frauds can really happen. So, when we are looking at journal vouchers, we have defined roles for particular people who can also be a creator. So, I can also be a creator, wherein the voucher created by me will get approved by my boss. But I also have a team who would, create vouchers and it would be approved by me. Now, what we noticed was, and that was something interesting, that if I have both these rights, when if I by default was creating a voucher, it was by default getting approved in the system and I was not even aware of it. So that was something that was happening. Secondly, if I was in the tax department and I would have created a voucher, what we noticed is that somebody from the finance from the payroll department was able to approve that journal voucher. So there was a mix between the roles. So that is the configuration of the roles as to who should have the creator and who to that creator should approve. That was not defined appropriately. So that's also something that can have an impact, because if you have to demonstrate some misstatements or over provisioning, under provisioning, this would play an important role, and therefore your creator approver is something that the configurations in the system for these play a critical role. The other interesting thing was this was an international location actually, where we had a online payment system with a bank. So what would happen is, from our system we would transfer the details to the banking system, and in the banking system you had an approver 1, approver 2, based on the amounts, and accordingly the payments were getting made. But we also had an admin right access over there in the banking. So the admin right access was somebody who would go and define who is the approver 1, approver 2, and define the limits, etc. Now it was very obvious that probably it was a gap or a which probably people didn't realize. The admin person would very conveniently get into the system, create a payment voucher for stationery, smaller items of 500 UK currency, and accordingly change the limits so that one approver is sufficient to approve those payments, and accordingly reinstate that. So the point was that admin rights for a particular online payment banking system was something which was very critical. It had to have a maker checker process in place, which we then accordingly did. So as a corrective action, of course, action was taken against the person, but as a preventive action, a maker checker was introduced for the purposes of ensuring that this does not recur again. Now the why part, I believe, is kind of explained. I've tried to convince as to why application or basic application testing knowledge is critical for us as internal auditors and as functional internal auditors typically. But how do you do it? So now the question is that, okay, Savio, we are not CISAs, we are not all this. How do we really audit this? So I believe that audit is round the computer, that we call it as looking at negative testings, right? Now, negative testing is something again which is interesting, but it also depends on how we define the use case, right? For example, if in an organization your air travel expense is to be approved only by the CFO, let's assume, then we can one do a negative testing to see whether if I create a voucher of air ticket, does it first of all go to the CFO? Of course, it goes, well and good. Now I create a voucher, expense voucher with air ticket as well as something which should not go to the CFO, and then let's see whether it's yet going, because at least air ticket is there. So your negative testing of entering values above a particular limit, if it has to jump authority levels, whether by entering in those amounts does it jump authority limits, is something that can be verified through negative testings. Data points, right? So if you see the examples on expense reimbursements on the vouchers, those data points was helpful to us, because when we took a download, okay, of the expense reimbursement through the data analytics, trying to understand employee wise who has approved it, who is the creator, who is the approver, uh, who is the auditor, the entire data. That's how we were able to identify these cases besides other issues. Similarly for the journal vouchers, right? Because then we noticed that, okay, the creator and approver is same. So data points, when we look at multiple data points for a particular analysis, it actually helps us to make sure that the logic algorithm provided is actually working effectively. And as we see, the systems that was created at some point of time, it actually, once the newer people come in, that system actually gets into a kind of a black box situation, right? Because we don't really know what it is. And therefore it is important for us to really dwell into the application testing, to make sure that system is working effectively, because manually it is very easy to identify issues, but if a system issue is there, it can really be big time. So I think this is a very important area for us to look into. The final area is on report writing and communication skills. Now this is, I believe, an area where we all probably have we have seen people having a lot of issues, a lot of challenges. um, Now the point of why, the why part of it, why should we really improve ourselves, so why should we really work towards getting into a better report writing and communicating when we are probably doing a presentation to the functional heads, auditees, is the first and foremost is that we should be able to do justice to the work done, right? Because if you're not able to communicate well, if you're not able to put our observation correctly into a report, which the auditee will go through and will accordingly appreciate, it is not doing justice to the all the hard work that we have put in, right? Now, what's the all the hard work that we have put in? If you really see, we have made sure that we have groomed well, so the first impression is good. We have made sure that we are polite in our conversations but firm with the auditee. We are sure that we have the business knowledge of the areas that we are auditing. So we have put in that effort. We have understood SOPs, blah blah blah. We have done our homeworks of going through, the or past observations, the manuals, etc., etc. We have gone deep and we have identified issues and observations. We have used our Excel skills. We have used application knowledge to find an observation. Finally, after all that effort, that we have identified an observation, now the justice that we can do to that is to present it properly so that it's well appreciated by people, and accordingly the success of that is in acceptance and further on it. And it also leads to us to focus on things, right? Because if you would have, let's say, 10 issues, if we are able to communicate it well, if we are able to present the report well, I think it leads the auditee to focus on the important elements in those observations, right? Because there could be many elements coming out of the observations. But if we are able to articulate it well, I think the focus for the auditee, it leads to a focus by the auditee. It's important as for us also to focus on those few elements, and it'll help progress the discussion well, because when we have the discussion with the auditee, it should kind of lead to a win-win situation for us. And now, how do we do it? Now, it's a difficult thing. This is not just the points. I think it's one of the difficult elements, but yes, we can keep it simple and short sentences. Sometimes I've seen a lot of people putting in a lot of long sentences, etc. I think it just complicates matters. If we keep it simple, we keep it short, I think that is good. We should keep the auditee in mind, because this is something which happens, and it used to happen earlier with me too, that we have spent in so much of effort, through all this process. We've got an observation, we are on top of it, we have spent 3 months over it, so we know the entire case, in and out, right? But the auditee probably does not, and the auditee's boss does not, and therefore to the audit committee it may not be. So they do not know what is the issue, whereas we have probably worked on 3 months and we know everything. So when we write, we probably write it in the manner in which we believe is from our point of view, and that's where we make a mistake, because we know it, we have spent 3 months, we have been in and out of it, but not the other person reading the report. So I think it is important for us to keep the auditee in mind, or the other stakeholders in mind, even when we are presenting to the audit committee, as to what is the background that we are talking about, why is it an observation, what has happened in it, in terms of data points, if we are able to specify, and definitely the root cause that we spoke about, right, in detail. If we are able to specify the root cause for it, the recommendation and the management response will always be in line with it, and it will be actionable, because that is something which is very important. And of course, we need to make sure that while we are giving recommendations, it has to be practical and definitely sustainable. Because if it's not practical and sustainable, we can do anything at one point of time, but if it is not something which can happen day in and day out, okay, then maybe after 1 year point, we'll probably again have an audit observation around it, and it'll have no meaning to it. So our observation that we are trying to do, we need to work with the auditee to find a practical and a sustainable solution. At sometimes, if it is compliance related, definitely we need to kind of work, because even that we need to really see, we really need to put ourselves in the auditee shoes, because I come from the operation background, so sometimes it becomes easy for me. But yes, we need to understand that if I was supposed to really implement this suggestion or this recommendation, how would I be able to implement, and whether it's going to be sustainable. So I think that is important. How do we improve further on report writing, communication skills? I think it's very important to read, because when we read a lot, I think it helps us to frame sentences, it helps us to get the right words in place. We should listen also to a lot of speakers. We could also be looking at news. We could be to improve our English, to improve the way that we communicate. I think all that plays a very important role in the whole process of report writing, communication. But this is definitely hard work required. There is no easy way out, let me tell you. I think for all the points that we talked about, of course, I also said that we have done the most difficult part of it, of becoming CAs, yeah, which is definitely the part. But there is also this part if we focus on, right? So we looked at these 8 skills, and this is the last one. But I believe the core, the core to all of this is focus, and I think the hard work that will actually take us to the next level. If we really put in the direction, our focus towards these elements through hard work, there is no shortcut. Okay, be it Excel, be it dwelling deep into it, because even some, I'll just go back on the analytics part of it. So we talk a lot of about analytics and data analytics and dashboards and all those things. But actually speaking, that's a huge process. Okay, because when we look at exceptions, and when we have few exceptions, we need to really see whether those exceptions are genuine exceptions. Are they false positives? Are they genuine exceptions? Can we get rid of it in the first place, ab initio, or so that we get pure exceptions that we can really work upon? So there's a lot of process. It's an evolving process that we refine those analytics and all that. So it's all hard work. So there's nothing really easy. But if we are able to really, pass through and become chartered accountants, I'm pretty sure that internal audit as a career option, having a large canvas, at play, is a very beautiful place to be in. And I'm definitely sure with small effort from our side, we can definitely achieve a lot in it. And it's definitely a good area. I'm enjoying it, and I really believe that we can all be in the same space. With that, I will again request you all to please join the Mentimeter. This is again for few surveys that are there. So these are the surveys that we are actually doing, because that's more of a summary part. So I'll request you all to join menti.com. Okay. And this is the number 85549654. I'll go into so this was the last survey that we had taken, wherein yes, we had identified 63% from the practice. Okay. Now we are now the request is that we rank, okay, the 8 skills based on the prior order of priority that you believe. Okay, so that's all up to you. We'll give in some more time over here. So I would request the participants, if you are able to see the screen, to please join in into menti.com. Please log in through the code of 8554, people who have recently joined, 9654, and accordingly rank your order of preference. So this will probably require some time. So I'll give in, probably we can give in 5 minutes, 6 minutes. So this will require a little time. If you're on a mobile, it'll probably require drag and drop. If you're on a laptop, that's pretty easy. So I will request you all to log in into menti.com, and through the code of 85549654, if you're able to give your ranks. Is this screen available, visible as of now? Paras or anybody can confirm that?
Yes, sir, screen is visible.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm not able to see any participants logging in. Okay, I know that it's a little tricky to drag and drop, but okay, thank you for that one. Okay, so I'll request the participants to please enter into menti.com through the internet browser. Please use the code 85549654. Please rank based on the order of the priority that you all believe is important. Okay. So I'll request the participants again to please log in into menti.com. This is important because it will give us a view of all the participants. I think this is a take home, right? It will give us a view and a perspective as to what we as a larger audience feel or believe, what is important to us as internal auditors, right? As internal auditors, what is it that we should be focusing on? So please log in into menti.com. Okay, we have 4 minutes, 12 seconds. Please enter the code 5549654. Please rank the skills in the order of what you all believe is the priority. So I see fewer participation. So may I request the participants who have logged in into this seminar, this session, can you please log in into menti.com? Please use the code 85549654. Please rank the risk skills that we are talking about, the priority. You can use the QR code also for logging into this page. So for people who have yet to, give rank the skills, I would request you all to please log in into menti.com and please rank. And thank you for those thumbs ups. So please rank. Yet there is a fewer participation than what we have seen, or we have participants on the webinar. So may I again request the participants to please, because it will just give a view of what we all believe, right? I think it's more of a collective wisdom as to what will really, because I just had my list, but it's good to have a collective wisdom. Okay, I'll not extend this 3 minutes and more. So what we are looking at now, till now that we have come, we are saying that yes, we had a participation of more experienced people, primarily from the practice, okay, rather than the industry, primarily from the practice. And what we currently believe, as you see, is that business knowledge, okay, is the far most important element for us to do an internal audit. Okay, and after that it is relating to doing our homework, being detail oriented, and the others follow, right? So I think the business knowledge, whenever we are doing any audit, I think doing our homework, being detail oriented, business knowledge is the key, for us to achieve a good audit level of audit. And I believe these three, actually, if you see, that's the way that we can actually achieve the self respect or the respect from the auditee point of view. If the auditee actually comes back and tells you, okay, you've done a good job, I think you have done your research and you have done a good job, I think that's a good pat on your back, right? Because I think it's a good deal to be in that situation. So I think that's the take from this presentation or this survey. We'll go to the next survey, or okay, we'll just wait for 1 minute and 43 seconds. We don't see a major shift, although yes, we just have the lower rankings basically shifting, but primarily we see the top three, which is very interesting. Although it's something which was probably known, right? I think it's not something coming out of nowhere. It's something probably already known, but it's good that we are all on the same page. I think it's important that we all recognize, and it's good that we are all recognizing, and it's a collective kind of a wisdom saying that yes, we all believe that this is the kind of uh, priority for this. Okay, so with that, I think we have already done. I'll move into the next Now, this is something which is important. Now, I'll just explain this. Please identify one skill, only one skill that you believe that you need to work upon. Now we know, so just to give a background, we know what we have said till now. We have said that yes, we believe that business knowledge, homework, detail oriented, blah, 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 all the others are the top rankings. That is perfectly fine. Now, as a team, what do we believe that we need to work on as an individual? Okay, I'm saying just one for an individual. So I'll again request everyone to. So I see maybe my team members, because if spreadsheet has come there, it could be one of my team members or some of my team members. Um,
It is
so
visible, sir.
yeah, it's visible. Okay. No, no, I'm just saying. I was just. I think one of them may be on the call. So I thought if it was my team member, that's why you would have defined it as a spreadsheet. So okay, so I'm saying one skill set which we believe that we need to work upon. Okay, so you need to work upon only one skill set. That's how it is configured. So I'll request people, participants on the call, on the webinar to please log in into Menti. Please use the code. Please define that one, because it'll again give us a good view, okay, to us, all of us. What generally do we feel is that one skill probably that we really need to work upon. So as of now, as you see, it's the spreadsheet, right, which is pretty, and report writing. Yeah, that's something which I keep telling my team, and they keep, probably if they are on the call, they must be yeah. So spreadsheet, report writing again is there. Yeah, I think very good. I think on the business side, detailed oriented, I think we are all working. I think we would all already probably be doing a good amount of work in that, which has been shown from here. So that's really nice. Oh my God, spreadsheet is turning out to be the winner, right? Okay. Oh, that's interesting. So spreadsheet and report writing, but actually speaking, again, I'll just spend a second in that, or a few seconds. A spreadsheet, I believe, when I look at out of 100 people, believe me, I believe that it's actually only 10%, okay, who really genuinely know how to use an Excel. I'm not talking, even, let's say, even with my level of competency, and probably which I believe, but yeah, I would say that from a scale of 1 to 10, I would rate myself as 6, because there is a lot of things in Excel which I've not used. So I was just that day discussing with my wife, and I said that if actually anybody rates himself or rates themselves as high, that means they really don't know Excel, or they are genuinely good, but it's really hard to find those genuinely good. But otherwise, one would rate in kind of thing, because there are a lot of functionalities which we don't use, and not use because we need it and we don't, but we don't know it actually also, and that includes myself. So fine. So I think yes. So what we are saying is, we are saying that yes, we are an experienced population. We are primarily from a mix of industry and practice, but primarily from practice. We believe that business knowledge, detailed oriented, and homework is the key skills that are important from a ranking perspective. But we believe that spreadsheet controls, or spreadsheet rather, a competency in the spreadsheets and report writing is something which is critical that we need to really work upon, besides business knowledge. So that's basically the outcome of this survey. We go on to, so thank you for that. I think this participation has been good. So we yet see, this is something which is easy, so I'll not wait along. It's primarily on those range. Now we go to the other one. Now, this one again, I will just explain. It is one skill that we believe that others need to improve. Now, it's the reverse way. It's not about you. It is what you think that others need to improve on. and then the answers will be pretty, interesting to match actually. Yeah, actually. so so it's not surprising. I think, yeah, I was also expecting the same answers, but yeah, let's see. So participation, I think I will request the participants to please, rank, please vote this. What is that one skill that we believe that others need to work upon? So it could be your team members, it could be your peers, it could be people around you. You generally believe, right, when you look around and you see how people do work, you know that, probably they don't know what they're talking about. So business knowledge could be one reason. They don't get into details. Data could be one reason, so they're not getting into details. So they talk about it at a very 30,000 feet level. Okay, this is not good, that is not good, but if you ask them data, they don't have data. So sometimes you probably have those kind of population also. So what is that one skill that others need to work upon? Okay, so I would request more participation, because we have very few people who are participating till now. So may I request the participants to please vote for this survey. So it'll again reconfirm to what we are talking about. Ki while I also need to improve. I means we also need to improve in Excel. Uh, we see the same problem with others also. So it's a kind of a mirror image that we are seeing. So that's interesting actually, because we had spreadsheets and report writing and business knowledge as something earlier. But what we see here is also pretty interesting. We see detailed orientation lacking in others. We see people personal grooming, which is very important. Actually, I would be surprised with that being on the lower side, but that's perfectly fine. I believe that that's definitely a neglected area, and it really has a very different bearing when you're interacting with people. And it can also be, personal grooming is also like, your mouth hygiene, which is such a very basic thing, right? But it's so critical, which we don't really take care of it, and I'm pretty sure we don't. So while we are waiting for the others, I'll just on this personal grooming, I'll just on a lighter note, I'll tell you, when I was in Brazil for an audit, there was a very interesting thing which I noticed, something out of the blue. So in the washroom, we actually had people coming with a paste and a brush, and they used to actually brush the teeth twice a day or multiple times a day. But that was something which was probably as a I don't know whether it was a culture or something, but I found it to be very strange. But yeah, it was something good. So oral hygiene was something taken care of, but that's it. Okay, so here is something that we're seeing is interesting. As of now, we have people, maybe if others can join in. So here, this is interesting. While we believe that spreadsheet and report writing and business knowledge was something that we had to work upon, what we see in others lacking is they are not detailed oriented. Okay, they don't do their homeworks and this and the personal grooming. So I think that is the three new elements added where we believe that others need to work upon. So I think, when we look at it as a mirror, okay, whether we are on that side or this side, because if this is what people feel about others, we could be that others. So I think it's good for us to introspect to see that, are we lacking on the personal grooming? Are we lacking on being detail oriented? Are we lacking on doing our homework? So probably that's what people feel when they interact with us, right? So I think this is a good thing to us to do an introspection, because if this is what people feel in general of others, we could be the others. So I think with that, just to recap, I think the ranking, I'll just come from the ranking. The ranking is business knowledge. We do the homework. We talk about detail oriented. We are talking about what is the skills that we need to work upon is spreadsheet and report writing and knowledge. And this is the skill sets that we're talking about others need to work upon. So with that, I come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. And over to the moderator.
Thank you so much, sir, for your wonderful deliberation. Now, I would like to request all the members to ask their queries in question answer box. So, the first query is professional skepticism is required in internal audit as we require it in stat audit?
I think it's that not generally skepticism. I think it is important for us if we go by the concept of going deep, we don't really need to be skeptical about things. I think if we just do our job, as I said, we are not into forensic, we are not into investigation. So I think if we just be normal looking at a particular process, I think that's good enough. We really don't need to look at things from always a negative perspective.
Okay. The another question is artificial intelligence and intelligent automation. They both are they both helpful in improving internal control system?
See, I don't know. As of now, the exposure to artificial intelligence that we talk about, there's a lot of talking about it, but actual the implementation of it is probably not yet, taken shape to a large extent. Okay, there's a lot of talking about artificial intelligence, but not really in the space of internal audit. I'm not exposed to that. Okay, let me put it that way, and I've not heard of it also in terms of automating things intelligently and trying to do that. I think that will probably definitely, when we are identifying exceptions that we have talked about through algorithms or this, I think that's where we have to be a little careful of how we can make the best of exceptions that we are getting. And as I said, it's a difficult process of going through because it's evolving, right? So you'll get a set of data, you'll get false positives, you'll get all those things. So you have to kind of keep looking at it, keep refining it till you actually come to a good level of point. So I think yes, smart automating is definitely the way of as of today, and probably in future artificial intelligence can definitely play a role, but as of now I'm not sure how it will.
Okay, thank you, sir. One of our member is asking that the internal auditors are working for the benefit of clients, and
Yeah.
practically we see that clients are not supporting the auditor. So, how to tackle the situation?
So see, I think by and large, it's been because of the legacy of internal auditors' reaction to issues that we are never welcomed by the auditee. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Sometimes the auditees are also kind of a little pain point kind of a scenario, so to say. So how to tackle it will be differently, as I said, if we are actually kind of polite, we are empathetic towards the auditee, we make inroads. Because see, if we actually do those jobs, like, so for example, let's role play it. If I've actually gone through a process, I know the business of the client, I have gone into details, I've done my homework. Now I go and approach the client and say that, okay, sir, I need only a 5 minutes, 10 minutes to begin with. I've gone through this process, I've gone through payroll, I've done this, I've understood you're in the IT industry, so blah blah blah. Can you please help me with these specific things? I'm pretty sure that that will automatically kind of cool down the auditee, irrespective of how the auditee is. And the auditee will kind of get into that situation of voluntarily then participating and helping you with the audit and being more participative than usual. So I'm pretty sure that is the way out. At least it's helped me all these years. I'm pretty sure it'll help you all also in the process. Paras, was I
Okay.
audible?
Yeah, you are audible. The another question is whether this spreadsheet will have relevance if the industries move to blockchain technology.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
If the industries move to blockchain technology, whether
Uh-huh.
a spreadsheet would have same relevance or not.
See, actually, 20 years back when ERP had actually come in, okay, I remember 2025, maybe 30 years back when ERP in all organizations were actually getting, implemented. The question was whether people's job will be there or not. And actually, what we saw was because of ERP, actually, you had people, more onto the ERP and Excel. From that point of time, again, it was Excel, and Excel also thrived. I think I don't know about blockchain because again, we hear a lot of blockchain, etc., etc. But its actual implementation or its actual usage in the daily life of maybe the accountants and this, I'm not really sure of that. These are all buzzwords. At least I'm not. I have read through, but I've not understood a bit of it as to how it is really implementable. And therefore, at least in the near future, I don't know which age group the participant is from. At least in the near future, probably it will not. Excel is definitely a skill set probably to be acquired. At least for the next 5 to 10 years, at least I can safely say that. And you can mark my word today for that.
Okay, thank you, sir. There are no more question as of right
Okay,
now.
great.
So if you are, do you want to add something else?
No, Paras, that's fine. Thank you very much. I just believe that internal audit, just the last word is that internal audit is definitely a very interesting career option for chartered accountants. It's a very, I have come to internal audit from the operations background, and I've really enjoyed working in as an internal audit. And it's got a large canvas. You can do a lot of things in internal audit role. So as chartered accountants, we are the best fitted people, okay, for an internal audit profession, and we can really do great and well in this profession. So with that, I would like to end. Thank you very much, Paras, and thank you board, and thank you participants, and have a nice evening.
Well, that was a power packed session on the topic. A huge thank to CA Savio sir for taking this up and enlightening us with this. I thank all the members for your valuable support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.